switching corners, and you're watching Guns N' Roses Central.
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to GNR Central. And this is the final record I have to talk about that had an anniversary in the month of November. It's kind of funny, November hits and all of a sudden it's the anniversary of like 4 Guns N' Roses records. And this may be the biggest anniversary or maybe the second biggest based on where you put Chinese Democracy. So Chinese Democracy, of course, turned 10 this November. Spaghetti Incident turned 25. We had Live Era, which turned 19. And then, of course, GNR Lies turned 30 this past November, which is crazy. So it was released on November 29th, 1988. And, it's not really a record or a full record. A lot of people just call it an EP or extended play. It only clocks in around 33 minutes. And it was really released to just capitalize on the phenomenal success that was Appetite. Now, one of the favorite stories I remember that Doug Goldstein told us when we interviewed him was how they came up with the idea of which songs to include on GNR Lies. So before Appetite came out, Guns N' Roses released a record called Live Like a Suicide. And this was only about 5,000 to 10,000 copies they actually released back in 1986. So Doug told us a story where a kid came up to Axl and said, "Hey, Axl, I'm a big fan. I've been trying to get my hands on Live Like a Suicide, but people are selling it for such ridiculous prices and basically taking advantage of people who are big fans." So Axl decided, like, why don't we just include those songs that are on Live Like a Suicide on GNR Lies? That way people won't be, selling Live Like a Suicide for ridiculous prices and basically price gouging people. Now, what's cool about about GNR Lies is that there was only one single released from the EP, and it's arguably one of Guns N' Roses' biggest songs, which is "Patience." The previous ballad that Guns N' Roses released was "Sweet Child of Mine," but there was sort of like a sleaze kind of part to "Sweet Child of Mine" because you had still, it was a very hard rocking song, but "Patience" showed a different side of the band that a lot of people hadn't heard before, and it peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. And as of March 8, 2018, it sold almost 10 million copies worldwide. So the last 4 songs on GNR Lies, which are the new songs, were recorded with acoustic guitars. They were written and recorded really only in a few studio sessions. This album was put together very quickly, and it almost seems like they didn't spend too much time overthinking it. So Mike Klink was interviewed on VH1's Behind the Music, and he basically called the recording sessions one of those magical rock and roll history moments. So what a lot of people may not know is that in later interviews, Axl stated that while he loved how the band sounded on the last 4 songs, he hated the sound of his voice. So Rose had recalled that his voice was husky and scratchy from the band's lengthy touring at the time, and if he could have re-recorded his vocal tracks in a separate session, he would have. Now, one of the coolest songs on the record is something that already premiered on Appetite, which was "You're Crazy." Now, there's a very fast version of "You're Crazy" on Appetite, and I have to admit, "You're Crazy" is probably my least favorite song off Appetite for Destruction. I think everything else is pretty much perfect on the record, but I'm not a big fan of "You're Crazy," but the version that's on GNR Lies, I absolutely love. So a significantly faster version of "You're Crazy" with electric guitars, of course, had been on Appetite for Destruction, and it was now recorded on GNR Lies as it was originally intended. Now, what's funny about GNR Lies is that, of course, the band caught a lot of flack for "One in a Million," but the song "Used to Love Her," which was really just showed a more dark humor kind of side of Guns N' Roses, really wasn't as controversial as "One in a Million" was. And even Guns N' Roses play "Used to Love Her" even to this day live in concert. And what a lot of people don't know is that "Used to Love Her" was written as a joke after Izzy Stradlin disliked the song he heard on the radio featuring some guy who was whining about a broad that treated him bad. So Slash stated that people think it's about one of our old girlfriends, but it's actually about Axl's dog. Now, another cool part about GNR Lies is I love the cover of the record. I think it's so different than anything else, and it was really just a band taking on the tabloid newspapers and all the ridiculous headlines that Guns N' Roses were making on all these magazines and all these rumors. And it's kind of funny. Guns N' Roses really had their say in Get in the Ring when they really talked about how misrepresented they were in the press. Now, if you guys aren't aware of it, Guns N' Roses are going to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of GNR Lies. They've released a new bunch of T-shirts on their merchandise website, GNRmerch.com, or if you guys want to go buy some GNR Lies shirt, you can. And I have to admit, like, I don't remember seeing a lot of GNR Lies shirts around when I went to GNR shows or even online. I don't even know how common they were for the band to sell them back in the day, but this is probably a great opportunity to go pick some up. I do like some of the designs that they do have. I think it's a lot better than what I've seen from other designs they've done for the other records. And of course, you can't talk about GNR Lies without talking about the elephant in the room, which is 1 in a Million. Now, I never liked the version of 1 in a Million that they put on the record. I thought the demo version was much better and much darker, and I feel like they should have just stuck with that version. The other thing that disappointed me with 1 in a Million is that Axl didn't stand by his song. Eventually, he kind of, wobbled. He didn't really stick by his guns, and I think he could have done a better job of explaining exactly why he chose to use those words. Now, granted, the media only looks at it at the surface and says, oh, he used the N-word or he used this word, and that's bad. And of course, the media doesn't care about context. It's all about coming up with a story that's going to get a lot of eyeballs. It was just much easier to say that Guns N' Roses used the N-word in a song rather than analyzing why Axl used that word. And I think the song is even relevant today. Even when you look at some of the comments on YouTube, it's funny when you see what people write about the song. Like, especially if you live in Europe, people write about a lot of parallels between what they're seeing going on in Europe and what the song's really talking about as well. But I thought it was a shame that he just didn't stick by his guns. And another thing you guys may not know is that Marilyn Manson was supposed to record a cover of 1 in a Million, but for whatever reason, he never ended up doing it. And he actually came out and criticized Axl for not standing by the song. But then, he himself wouldn't go do a cover of it, which I found kind of odd. I also wasn't very surprised when the Appetite for Destruction reissue came out, and 1 in a Million was nowhere to be found on the release. I think the band made the conscious decision saying, if you guys have been following Axl's Twitter page and reading all the social commentary about him, everybody says he's woke. I think it would have probably created a lot of negative feelings for some of the people who changed their opinion about Axl in the last couple of years if they had released 1 in a Million. And even Slash basically gave an interview saying that they didn't really overthink too much about it, but they made the collective decision that we probably shouldn't release it. And I think the record label probably had a lot to do with that as well, given the political climate these days. So that does it for my thoughts on GNR Lies. I think GNR Lies is a great part of the Guns N' Roses collection. I actually liked a lot of the Live Like a Suicide songs that were included on it, and I think for a lot of fans, those songs seem new because I don't think a ton of people actually heard Live Like a Suicide. And, if you had listened to Live Like a Suicide, you may not have even noticed that there were a bunch of covers, like Reckless Life was actually a Hollywood Rose cover, even though it was written by Axl and Izzy. And Nice Boys was, of course, a Rose Tattoo cover, and Mama Kin was an Aerosmith cover. The only song I really didn't like off of Live Like a Suicide or GNR Lies was Move to the City. There's just something about that song I just don't find very entertaining, although I do like the version that's on that was included on the Appetite reissue as part of the Sound City demos. I don't like all the additional horns that they tried adding, or the version on Live Era that has all the horns. I just like the very stripped down version. But I did find it really weird on the reissue how they had so many versions of Move to the City. They had the acoustic version, they had the 1986 Sound City studio version, and of course they had the GNR Lies version. And I just felt like that band was trying to jam that song down our throat and make us like that song. But I found that it's an okay song. I actually did like the acoustic version of Move to the City as well. But those are my thoughts on GNR Lies. Let me know what your thoughts are on the release. Were you guys around in 1988 when it came out, and what was your impression when you heard it for the first time? And what did you think when you heard a song like 1 in a Million? Did you think that Guns N' Roses were going to get into the amount of trouble that they did? I just love everything that happened afterwards because, Guns N' Roses opened for the Rolling Stones, Axl quits the band, and then there's all this controversy that happens during those 4 shows that they opened for the Stones back in late 1989. I mean, I know Kevin told me he went to all 4 shows, and that must have been a very exciting time to be a GNR fan. But it was also probably very scary because, you love this band. It's one of your favorite bands, and all of a sudden the lead singer says he's quitting. It's the last show they're going to be playing. I mean, it was just so tumultuous and so volatile, and that's one of the reasons people love Guns N' Roses. Of course, they don't have that characteristic anymore, but maybe that's a good thing. But thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and be sure to hit like and subscribe, and go check out GNRCentral.com for the latest and greatest Guns N' Roses news. Take care.